Okay, well, welcome everybody. We're delighted that you've taken time out of your busy schedules today to join us for Margin and Mission Ignition Lab 2. We have 2 action-packed hours and it will go by quickly. This is a fun lab, just like the other ones are, but of course, we think that they are all fun because that's what earned income is fun. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started. The session today is a continuation of our lab series, exploring earned income possibilities. And we've titled this one, Identifying Opportunities to Do Good and Do Well. We do that for a reason, because we want each of you to really continue to explore possibilities for earned income ventures. It can be taking an existing one and evolving and growing it to the next level, or it can be creating something completely new, an idea that you may have for earned income that maybe even is a little off the wall and a little wacky, but that's okay because this is the exploration part of our earned income series. So with that, we have very simple goals for today, and they continue to be very focused on gaining additional insight into earned income. So the first is, as I mentioned before, for this entire group to continue to explore your entrepreneurial possibilities. Secondly, we've got 3 organizations that we're going to share their stories about and with you all today and their experiences. For those of you who were in our first lab, we shared a lot of little mini snippets or case studies for organizations and what they did for their earned income ventures. But today's going to be a bit more of a deep dive into 3 organizations. And importantly, what we hope you will gain from this session today and our continuing series is an understanding of how you can apply some tools, some rigor, some thinking, some discipline to identify your most viable earned income opportunities. So very simple goal for today. As I said, our agenda is action-packed. We're here together for 2 hours. We're going to start off with a little bit of a recap and kind of the process that we went through since Lab 1. And the reason we do that is because we have some newbies here today. So thank you to the newbies who are joining us for the first time. And then, of course, just to refresh those who were with us just about a month ago at Lab 1. We're also then going to dive in, as I said, and talk about the stories from these 3 organizations. We're going to leave a little bit of time for what we call a rapid fire ideation exercise in case any of your teams can benefit from that. And then we'll take a few minutes to just share some next steps. If anybody wants to get connected, please feel free. You know that we're big believers in social media. So if you hear anything today that is worthy of a tweet or a post on social media, please feel free to do that. These are our hashtags, our Twitter handles, and our Facebook handles as well. You know the drill on Zoom, but Josephine, I'm going to turn it over to you just to give everybody a quick reminder.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So nice to see all of you, and especially some familiar faces. So Jess, we all know the Zoom etiquette, but first and foremost, be aware that the session is being recorded. Just letting you know. And please mute yourself, so unless you're speaking, so that it lowers the background noise. If you would, most important for us taking attendance and being able to know who's who, if you'll rename yourself. If you don't know how to do that, if you take your cursor into your box with your picture, you'll find 3 dots at the top right-hand corner. You click those dots and a drop-down box comes and it lets you rename. So if you'll put your first and last name and then the initials of your organization or your organization's name, whatever fits there, that would be fabulous. Let me know if you're not sure where to go. So it's in your picture square box with the 3 dots, and it drop down box, and it lets you rename yourself. Also, if you have questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the chat box, and Mike and Larry will respond to as many questions as they can from the chat box and during the Q&A throughout the session. That's
Great.
it. Back
Thank
to
you, Josephine. And Josephine, don't go away because we're going to do a quick Zoom photo. So I'm going to take us off of screen share. If you're not on video, we would certainly appreciate seeing your smiling face. And I think, Josephine, we're going to have to do two, let's see, 2 screenshots. Is that it?
For me, I only need 1. I mean, we're
Okay.
going to do 2, but I have it all on one screen. So give me 1 second. Let me, I'm prepping. So if I'll tell you to smile and hold, I feel like Barbara should be doing this. Just kidding. I just had to throw that in there. I'll tell you smile and hold. I'm going to click it twice because if I don't, somehow I mess it up. All right, here we go. Smile and hold and relax. 1 more. Again. If you're not on screen, if you want to open up your camera, that would be great. Give you a second. Okay, smile and hold. Fabulous. Okay, thanks.
Okay, back to business. Thank you, Josephine. A few webinar must-dos, which we shared with you during the first session, but again, for those of you who weren't with us, please keep open minds today. That's part of the exploration process. We do want you to be creative and explore possibilities, so be thinking about your own organization as you're seeing the stories that we tell about others. Hopefully you'll learn something new today, and you'll likely reinforce things that you already know. And equally important, we want to make sure that you have fun. So we are going to do that today. Speaking of fun, our baby pictures here, Larry Clark, other managing partner and principal at No Margin, No Mission. Larry, you want to say hello?
Hi, everybody.
And as I said, I'm Michael Oxman, also a managing partner and principal. We have partnered with the Patterson Foundation now for 10 years on this initiative called Margin and Mission Ignition, and it's all about helping organizations be more thrivable through earned income and social enterprise. With us today, as well, is Michael Corley. He's the Senior Consultant for Administration at the Patterson Foundation, and of course, you've met Josephine. So without further ado, let's dive in. So what is Margin and Mission Ignition? And again, this is for those of you who are joining us for the first time today. It is an initiative from the Patterson Foundation, as I said, that's focused on helping nonprofits thrive through earned income and social enterprise. And the Patterson Foundation's gift to each of the participating organizations is these 4 learning labs. 2 are on site, lab number 1 and lab number 4, and then the middle 2 today and the next one are going to be virtual. And each one is designed to address a specific topic on earned income, and they are intended to build on each other. We also have 2 mini Zoom consulting sessions. They're just an hour each that we do with each of the organizations. And all of you have been through your first mini Zoom consulting session. So Larry and I have had a nice opportunity to get to know your teams and the things you're thinking about for your earned income opportunities. Those mini consults take place after lab 1, and there will be another one after lab 3. And they're really intended to be an opportunity for discussion, talk about your homework, answer your questions, and take action. So those of you who know the Patterson Foundation also know that oftentimes there is something more, and that is certainly true in this initiative. So for those organizations that fully participate in our lab series, we offer an opportunity to be considered for advancement to a very valuable consulting phase of the initiative. And that consulting phase of the initiative really allows you to take a very deep dive once the lab series is over into your earned income venture. And it includes really four phases of work. One is to help you develop a comprehensive business plan for your earned income venture. Very important. We'll talk more about that. Secondly, to help you raise your startup or growth capital for your earned income venture. Also very important. And then once you've done that, of course, it's great to have a business plan and it's great to have startup or growth capital, but we then work with you to help you implement your business plan and bring it to life. And then we stay with you for a period of time to help you track and monitor your progress over time. So a number of organizations in the 4-county region have been through MMI, as we call it, over the past 10 years, and it's quite valuable, as they would attest to. Today, you will see when we share these stories with you, how each of these phases of the initiative played out for various organizations. Okay, we have a poll question. So Josephine, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce it.
Fabulous. Here we go. The first poll question is, what is most valuable about your MMI experience so far? Sorry. The lab information and learning, time to focus on earned income, opportunity to work with your team, consultants one-to-one time, completing the worksheets, or all the above. So if you haven't done a poll, you should be able to click right on your answer. And we'll be able to see in real time which is the most popular. A couple more of you still need to answer.
I'm guessing that because there's several people here who were not at Lab 1, they may not be answering this, but that's okay.
Okay, one more second to answer. And here we go. So what do you think, Mike?
All right, well, it looks like we're kind of evenly split between, let's see, time to focus on earned income. That's good. Consultant one-to-one time, that's good. And then all of the above, which is also good. So we just wanted to ask to get a sense for and check in to see where each of you are at. And again, for those of you who couldn't answer it, hopefully you'll be able to answer it at the next one. So let's keep moving. All right. Ultimately, as we continue into today's session, we want to just remind you, and somebody said it quite well many years ago. His name happens to be Thomas Edison, and he was quite visionary in a number of ways, but he said, remember, when you've exhausted all possibilities, you actually haven't. So in that spirit, let's keep moving. Larry, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Let's do a couple minutes of recap. What happened at the first lab and since then. So where did we leave off? There's a picture. Half of you are not in that picture because half of you are brand new, but we like to take pictures, as you saw at the beginning of our lab today. So what did we focus on? We focused on 3 types of earned income. So products and services, capital, and intellectual assets. And you had a chance during the lab to develop some current and some future earned income opportunities, some that you already have and some that you're considering in the future. And we walked around and had good conversations with each of your teams. You also did a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's really important to do that against every earned income opportunity. And then you spent a little bit of time with risk and mitigation. Kind of what are those greatest risks? How would we mitigate them if we move forward with that product, service, or idea? We introduced to you our margin and mission matrix. You charted on the matrix during the lab, kind of where your ideas fell. Many of you had ideas in high mission, low margin, where a lot of nonprofit ideas sit. But some of you were able to move them over to high mission, high margin. That's where we like to see your ideas fall, and hopefully can develop a business strategy around that. So a little bit of process since that first lab. We had our one-to-one consulting Zoom sessions with each of you. Some of you had multiple people on those calls. They were excellent. We went through your worksheets. You had really good questions. We had a chance to talk about the initiative and very, very good outcomes for those calls. Highlights, you were all very enthusiastic about earned income. Everyone had at least one earned income possibility, whether it's a current or a future. Most of you had multiple ideas, and you were trying to figure out, which is that last bullet, how do you select the most viable opportunity moving forward? That's a difficult decision to make, and part of our process that we'll help take you through. So let's do our last poll question in this intro piece. Josephine, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks. Here we go. Thinking about your earned income progress since Lab 1, for those of you that were at Lab 1 or participated in the calls with Mike and Larry, what has transpired in your organization? We significantly advanced our thinking and action. We made some progress, but know there's much more to do. We didn't move the needle much at all, and we have too many competing priorities and no time to think about it. So what has been your earned income progress since Lab 1? And those answers are flying in. And not that it matters, but we can't tell in the end who's answering which way, and it doesn't show on the screen. All right, a couple more seconds. And here we go. It looks like a lot of people made progress.
That's awesome. A lot of progress was made. Only one had competing priorities and no time to think about it, which is completely understandable, especially during this time of year. So congrats, a lot of work has been done. Thank you. Thanks, Josephine. I'll turn it back over to Mike.
Thank you. The next thing we wanted to do was just take a couple of minutes to ask you what kind of earned income possibilities, opportunities are you considering right now? It actually came up in the survey, the post Lab 1 survey, that some folks wanted to know, what are some of these organizations currently doing? So if we can, let's just stop screen share, open it up, and ask if anybody would like to just share briefly what is a current earned income venture or activity that you have. And we know with this group, a number of your organizations are already doing earned income. So just raise your hand and then you can unmute yourself and share. Who wants to share? Kinsey. You're on mute.
Unmuting. Okay. Hi, everyone. I think I spoke about this in the last Zoom session, but a couple of the opportunities that we have here at the Art Center for revenue growth are in the classes, our teaching education department, and then also in the exhibitions, having artwork for sale. So those are two areas that we kind of have focused on in the last year building up.
Good. And just a quick question, since we always like to ask this, are both of those mission aligned with the organization?
Yes, creating a platform for artists to exhibit their work and also sell their work as part of our mission. And then also accessibility to affordable art classes and programs is also something that we try to work on with the community.
Got it. And I see Barbara's nodding her head, yes. All right. Thank you, Kinsey from Art Center Sarasota. Who else can share just briefly an earned income venture or activity that you currently have? Stephen Ray, Restore Global, unmute yourself.
Hey, one of the things that we'll do is it generates, it's part of their global side of things. We outsource supply chain for some of our global partners, very large nonprofits that operate all over the world. And that provides a significant level of earned income for us. And it's right in our mission, right in our problem. So in essence, we outsource sourcing, management, and logistics for some of our large global partners.
Good. All right. Thanks, Steve. Who else? Who else? Aaron, Save Our Seabirds. Anything that you can share?
Yeah, currently, we do a couple things. We actually do programs, educational programs, which is a fee for service. We'll occasionally do some adult programs as well on the earned income side. The other thing we have is a small nature store. We've in the past sold items on our website, but we mainly have those items in our office area where people will come in and purchase, and we'll also bring them when we do outreach events, that sort of thing. So
Good.
little merchandise, it's aligned with the mission, of course, because it's all bird or environmental themed products.
Right. Good. Thank you, Aaron. Ken Tarasi at Sarasota Opera. I know you guys have lots of earned income activity.
Well, yeah, after the one-on-one with you, Michael, focusing on the costume opportunity, the rentals and with the other opera companies, we have we have assets that are sets, and then we have costumes, a large, huge costume collection. Our sets don't always transfer to other companies because our stage is pretty small, but costumes, every opera company needs them. We're seeing university rentals. So we're really anxious and excited to push this forward.
Yes, and fun fact that Ken shared with me was Sarasota Opera actually has the largest opera costume collection, I believe, in the country. Is that right, Ken?
Yeah.
Right in Sarasota. So that's quite remarkable. One last one. Who else can share an earned income venture that they currently have? How about the Sarasota Art Museum? Sam, Virginia?
Hi there. We are considering some rental opportunities as a newer venue. I think there's a lot more potential to grow, but we've been a little limited in some resources to get moving forward on that.
Well, you certainly have wonderful facilities that are quite coveted, and have to imagine that they would be quite wanted by folks in the community.
Right.
All right. Well, certainly no shortage of earned income ventures and activities currently, and thanks to all of you for sharing. We're going to go back into our slideshow and keep moving. So with that, we're going to spend time now doing a bit of a deep dive into the stories from 3 organizations, so that A, we can share with you what others have done, but B, you have an opportunity to see how different organizations handled either launching a brand new earned income venture or taking an existing one and growing it and evolving it. So either one of those is absolutely acceptable, fine, and encouraged. For your organization, though, depending on which way you'd like to go, is really going to be up to your team to see what makes the most sense. Just one other quick comment. These are 3 very different kinds of organizations, different sizes in terms of operating budgets, different missions, and working in sort of different sectors of the nonprofit space, which we did by design. And then the other thing we just want to note is that as you're looking at and sort of watching these 3 stories unfold, you're going to see common themes. We're going to share with you some things that will be maybe a bit repetitive, but there's a reason for that. And that is, we want you to see the discipline and the rigor and the process that each organization went through when they moved from identifying their earned income possibility and then taking it through sort of the deep dive consulting phase of this initiative, because as I said earlier, it entails business planning, raising startup and growth capital, implementing the plan and bringing it to life, and then lastly, tracking and monitoring the progress over time. So those are some things that we really want to make sure everybody understands and walks away with today. And before we launch into the first story, one thing just to keep in mind, and we'll talk more about this at Lab 3, is all three of these organizations have been successful at their earned income ventures, but it wasn't by accident. It was really because of this thing that we call LWRCC. If you've never heard that before, it'll roll off your tongues by the time you're done with our labs, LWRCC. And leadership, willingness, readiness, capacity, and culture are those 5 factors that we believe need to be in alignment for your organization to succeed at earned income. So just something to keep in mind as you're hearing these various stories, and also thinking about your own organizations related to earned income. Okay, Larry, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce our first story.
All right. Let me introduce Tom Melville. Tom is Executive Director of the Literacy Council of Sarasota, and it's our first story. Their mission is to improve adult literacy through personalized needs-based tutoring and small group instruction. They have been in Sarasota for a very long time. There are literacy councils actually throughout Florida, throughout the country. There's, I believe, 2 based in Sarasota County, 1 in South County, and then 1 in the greater Sarasota area. They looked at 3 earned income possibilities. So they went through the lab series. At the very end, they said, you know, what about small group instruction classes? Some of that they were starting to do. They hadn't quite implemented yet. Some standalone workshops, which they haven't done. And then tutor training workshops, which they hadn't done either. So imagine they do a lot of classes, but they have a lot of tutors that actually work one-on-one with people going through ESL programs. So those are their 3 possibilities. They went through the SWOT analysis, risk and mitigation exercise. They had some preliminary information that they needed to gather. They actually developed a whole list of questions, went out into the community, went to their board members, went to their volunteers and their tutors, asking questions, had conversations internally and externally. And again, gathering that information to say, how do we make the right, best decision here that will, 1, have great mission impact and also generate some revenue for us. So they prioritize those. They look at the market need and demand, the customers with the dollars to purchase it, operational ease. Is this going to take 50 people to pull off? Is this going to be, 4 people? Speed to market. Can we get this up and running within 5, 6, 7 months, or is this a 3-year ramp up to get it to market? What kind of margin contribution might we have? And again, somewhat guessing in the beginning because they don't have a business plan in front of them. So they're anticipating what that margin contribution might be. And also, will this have a mission contribution? Will this impact the people that we're trying to reach through the Literacy Council? So those are some of those criteria that they used. Based on that analysis and earned income ideas, they narrowed the focus to 1. They went to their board, they presented the idea to their board, got their board approval, and then shared it with their key staff, their volunteers, and their donors. And it was really important that they shared it with their donors at this point to get some feedback from their donors, make sure that their donors were on board with it, because they knew they were going to have to raise some startup capital once a business plan was done. And they wanted to make sure some of those donors were kind of in on the ground floor, which they were. So they had those 3 ideas. Josephine.
Hi. I'm pulling it up. So let us know which earned income opportunity you think Literacy Council chose. Small group instruction, standalone workshops, or tutor training workshops. I love this part. We should give prizes to the winners, you guys.
Mhm.
Few more seconds. You're just choosing which earned income opportunity you think Literacy Council chose. And here we go.
All right.
Results. Larry will
Well,
tell you the answer.
yeah, 2/3 of you are wrong. Oh, well, that's how that goes. Josephine, do you want to turn the slide? Oh. So it's small group instruction. And they decided they needed to create small group instruction classes for 3 target markets: businesses in the community that are looking for ESL programs within their business, nonprofits in the community who have clients that need ESL programs, and also schools. So Sarasota Public Schools and others that they wanted to target and make sure that they can work with their kids. So offer those core programs in basic education, GED prep, and ESL for employees, clients, and parents. So again, they had never focused on businesses before, and they hadn't really focused on nonprofits. So those were 2 brand new target markets for them. So they went through business planning. You can see in the picture, that was the team that actually wrote the business plan. They had leadership, board, and staff involved. They developed that business plan with input from obviously their team, their board, volunteers. They had to do some research around those 3 different markets. And then they communicated with key stakeholders along the way. They wanted to make sure that they were bouncing those ideas off of their stakeholders as they move forward, so their stakeholders would be right lockstep in line with them when the business plan was done. They raised their startup capital. They had their fast pitch. They presented to their donors. We call them mission impact investors and funders. They made the ask. They met one-on-one with some of those individual donors that couldn't come to the fast pitch. I think they actually did 2 fast pitches. They did very diligent follow-up. So after the fast pitch, within a couple of days, they're making those phone calls or setting up those meetings with those potential donors. Their board was fully engaged in raising the startup capital, and they actually exceeded their startup goal to get their business off the ground. And you can see our pictures there. We look a little bit younger, Michael Corley, don't we? It was a few years ago. Then they began to implement the business plan. They had to restructure their staff. They added a new staff person, which was part of their startup capital. And I think Mike and I, during many of our calls with you, talked about, don't think about this business in your current staff configuration. Think about, you have the opportunity to add people. They added somebody. They developed marketing and communication. They had a whole new website designed and developed. Then they did their sales outreach, and they launched their business. Have been very successful. Mike? Within their business plan, they had revenue for all 3 years, and then they had their net profit margin. They actually exceeded their revenue in a couple of those years. And you can see, based on 30 service agreements in the first year, 47 in year 2, and 58 in year 3. And they exceeded each one of those service agreements. Other results. Really positive brand exposure. The business community didn't know they existed. So they moved into a brand new market, got a lot of brand exposure, 50% increase in people served. So imagine the mission impact that they had just by launching this business. They increased 50% the numbers, 33% increase in volunteer tutors. They had more volunteer tutors wanting to participate with them because they saw the excitement in this new business. And their goal was to serve 1,000 adults in year 1, or by the end of year 3. They actually achieved that by year 2. Really good outcomes. I will just open it up. Any questions about the Literacy Council, the process that they went through? Anything. If you want to put it in the chat box, maybe. Oh, Mike just opened it. So any questions about the Literacy Council or the process?
Larry, I have a question. Maybe you can just share this with the group, because you talked a lot about they engage their leadership, their board, and their staff throughout the initiative. Why was that important?
We find it very, very important to include all three of those because you need that support from leadership, board, and staff to move it forward. You don't want any one of those three to be a deterrent as you begin to launch your business, which is why it's really important that we've wanted you and have asked you and actually prioritized it for this initiative to have a board member involved. We have found that those executive directors need a board liaison to be able to share the information and to respond. So it's really important to have those three components supporting you as you move forward. Good question, Mike. Other questions about Literacy Council? Yeah, Elaine.
Okay. Hi, Larry.
Hi.
Question for you, because I was just curious on how they made the initial selection to go the route that they did. Was it because they had little to none competitors in that arena? I believe that you mentioned that they had not tapped into the business community and a few of the others. But was it also because they had very few competitors? Because to me, I'm thinking of it on a logical basis. I don't know why that selection had been made. I would have done something a bit different, but I don't have enough background in the organization. So how much work did they do to identify the competitors, if there were any?
Yeah, they did, like I said, a SWOT analysis for each one of those ideas, those three ideas, and then they took it through risk and mitigation. One of those risks was what competitors do we have in the marketplace? So they had to look at competitors with each one of those three earned income ideas, and they found there was very little competition in the business community, especially. There was some in the schools, very little in the nonprofit community. So they had two of the three that they knew that there were very little competitors. So that was a plus for them with that idea. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Good comment.
Yeah, that makes sense to me why they would have selected that then.
Yeah,
okay.
Good comment.
Just curious.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Larry, can you just comment too on the fast pitch? Again, for those folks who aren't aware of what a fast pitch is in our margin and mission ignition world, that might be helpful.
Sure. So a fast pitch is like Shark Tank, only it's a kinder, gentler version of Shark Tank is what we call it. So you will have a couple of months to work with another consultant who's you haven't met yet. Her name is Sarah Leonard, to help get people into the room. You will invite people to your fast pitch. You have 15 minutes to present your business plan. You will have it printed, handed out to them. You present your business in 15 minutes, and there's about 30 minutes of Q&A that take place. All different kinds of questions. There could be questions about, the mission impact, about the financials that you have, and then you have a few days that we want you to quickly follow up with everybody who comes to the fast pitch, and hopefully you raise all your startup capital. Mike and I did a fast pitch just recently, in fact, the day before the first lab, with an organization in Sarasota that raised $120,000 in that 20 minutes. So it's possible to raise a lot of money very quickly because many of these donors have never seen a business plan, and they can see in the business plan where you actually can create a profit margin, and you won't necessarily come back to them for funding again for that same project. So a little bit about the fast pitch. We usually see anywhere between 15 and 35, 40 people at every fast pitch. Okay, good. Mike, shall we move on?
Okay. So let's go on to story number 2. And I'd like to introduce Peggy Fear, She is the head of school at Charlotte Prep, and Charlotte Prep is based in Port Charlotte, so not too far from where each of you are. And I just want to preface this one by saying, while we're going to talk about the school and their earned income venture, we know we've got two schools who are part of today's session, so listen up. But also these stories, despite the fact one's for a school, one's for a literacy organization, are applicable to each of your organizations. So just be thinking about, kind of the process that they went through, both to identify earned income possibilities and then move them through to become full-fledged earned income ventures. So briefly, the mission of Charlotte Prep is to prepare students to be positive and productive individuals, provide a well-rounded education, and to create a passion for lifelong learning. They came into our labs and they were a little hard pressed to come up with some good ideas for earned income. But ultimately, through the lab process, quite a bit of creative thinking was stimulated, and they came up with 3 opportunities. One was classroom rentals for a fee. The second was what they called class supply kits. So like any school, a teacher has a list of the supplies that you need for your class at the beginning of the year. And, typically families go out and buy them. And then the third one was to create a school store. So they did not have any of these at that point at the school. So they were all brand new earned income opportunities. So like Larry shared with the Literacy Council, their sort of homework in the labs was to really go through and think about each one of those. So to apply some of that rigor and discipline to that thinking process. So they did that SWOT analysis. What are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? They identified the risks and then they mitigated those risks for each of those earned income ideas. They did some preliminary information gathering to really better understand more about each of these. And they too had conversations, lots of conversations, both internal and external. And importantly, they did continue to think about each of those earned income opportunities through this other lens that that we call kind of the 6 criteria. So 1, is there market need and demand for it? Because again, that's important. Don't assume that if you build it, they will come. You truly want to make sure that folks want what you have to offer. Also importantly, are there customers that have dollars to purchase, in this case, any of those 3 earned income opportunities? We like operational ease when it comes to bringing a venture to life or taking it to the next level. So we asked them to think about it through that lens as well. If it's the more complexity there is, sometimes the more challenging it can make it. Not always, but sometimes. Speed to market, how quickly could they get this sort of off the ground? If it got mired in too much time, over the course of 1 or 2 or 3 years, it makes it a little less interesting. And then lastly, what might it contribute in terms of margin and mission for the organization? And again, we're sticklers about not just looking for it to generate revenue, but also to align with the mission of the organization and to help create more mission impact. So that's an important lens as well. So based on the analysis of those earned income possibilities, they did narrow their focus to one that they learned or thought or believed was going to be most viable. They too secured board approval to move forward with that particular earned income venture, and they shared it widely. Staff, board, volunteers, donors, and so forth. all integral to the process. All right, so Josephine, I'm going to let you introduce the next poll question.
Maybe. Which earned income opportunity do you think Charlotte Prep chose? Oh, those answers are coming in. Now you guys are getting the hang of it. I still say we should give prizes. If they get it right. Because they're coming in fast. Whoops, sorry. And it looks like they're done. Here we go.
Okay. So let's see, we've got a nice distribution of responses here. Most of you said a school store, and then class supply kits, and then classroom rentals. So guys, it could have been certainly any of these, but let's share. So let me just get rid of this survey. All right. So for those of you who said school store, you are correct. But also for those of you who said class supply kits, you're correct. Because cleverly, they decided to make the class supply kits part of their school store. So they introduced what became known as the Fin Shop. And that little dolphin that you see there is actually the school mascot. They held a contest at the school among all 250 students and all of their faculty and staff to name the store. And this was the winning name, the Fin Shop. You can see the inside of the store there in that photo with the slat wall. And then in the photo down below, you can see their online store. But essentially, this was an online and on-site or brick and mortar student-run store for school families to purchase school supplies, classroom supply kits, PE shirts and uniforms, which the students had to purchase at the beginning of the year anyway, school spirit swag, plus snacks and beverages. And what's interesting here is that these are all things that families, I should say, basically had to buy, but they were buying them through other sources before the Fin Shop was created. So why not bring that revenue opportunity in-house in their earned income venture and have those revenues contribute towards the mission? They also, to make this Fin Shop even more mission aligned, they decided to create an entrepreneurial education and training program for students. So it actually became a class all about entrepreneurship and the importance of thinking about that for the students. And they even took it a step further by not just having this class, but allowing certain students who wanted to work in the store to actually be trained and become a store employee. So all part of helping to build that mission. It also created an interesting opportunity for alumni and other folks from the school to both purchase school branded items and to also become involved. Of course, all profits supported the mission of Charlotte Prep. So kind of just a win-win-win all the way around. Once they, of course, chose the Fin Shop, the store, as their earned income venture, just like the team from Literacy Council, they engaged in a full-blown business planning process. So they too selected their team, which consisted of the leadership of the school, board, staff, students, teachers, and also a consultant, which in this case was myself and Sarah Leonard. They developed a business plan. They did truly generate input from a variety of folks at the school, and it was authored by members of the team. And then, of course, they did communicate with various stakeholders throughout the process. But I will add that they'd made students a very important component of this whole initiative. They were truly involved. You can see here that they too raised their startup capital as part of the fast pitch, but this was the first time ever that a fast pitch as part of margin and mission ignition was actually done by students. So these were essentially all 7th and 8th graders at the school who fully conceived of, developed, and presented their business plan to donors and funders and investors. They had 2 fast pitches. They did have a full house at both. Their board stepped up. They raised nearly half of their startup capital, which was almost $100,000 at their first session. And then they too did diligent follow-up with their prospects and donors even after those fast pitches to make sure that they could raise all of their capital. They took their financial ask into the community. So when they were meeting, when they were presenting, when they were at events, they announced it, they shared it. And in the end, they exceeded their goal, which gave them nice working capital to launch this venture, get it off the ground, and to help make it thrive. The next phase of their initiative was, to implement it and bring it to life. And it included quite a number of activities that really helped their store become quite viable. First thing they had to do was reconfigure space and do a store build out. They were kind of busting at the seams in their school, but they identified a place to do it, but it required moving stuff around. They also purchased what they decided to call an on-the-go cart. So it became the Fin Shop portable store, and they brought it to other events and to other parts of the school and to sporting events when they occurred, so that folks could actually buy merchandise at those events. They had to source inventory for their store, and you can see a lot of inventory here, from tumblers to hoodies to t-shirts to all kinds of school supplies, and the list goes on. They also had to hire a part-time staff member, so they had the capital to do that. They had to develop an e-commerce system, so essentially having a website and a POS that would allow them to run their store efficiently and to manage inventory and so forth. And then they also wanted to make sure that they could develop a marketing campaign to create visibility, awareness, and bring folks in. E-blasting, social media, and even some advertising as well. So implementation was quite busy for the organization. They had projected their revenue conservatively, which we always encourage them to do, which you can see here built between year 1, 2, and 3. So their revenue was projected to grow steadily, as was their net income. And I will say that the store has done beyond what this organization had expected it to do. They remind us frequently that students line up at the store every day. Literally, they line up whether they're there to purchase snacks, whether they're there to purchase beverages, or of course, other merchandise that's available in the store. And the other, I think, important component here was they learned very quickly that offering class supply kits at the very beginning of the school year so that families could purchase them without having to go out and shop at Target or Amazon or Walmart, but make it convenient, allowed the school to realize some revenue that they had never realized before, that was also allowed for mission impact. As Larry had shared with Literacy Council, I think the beauty of all this is there were a number of other outcomes and results that happened as a result of this business venture. So we kind of call those ripple effects. A few of them, just to highlight, was it created a lot of enthusiasm and excitement in the school from students, teachers, parents, and others. It also ignited an entrepreneurial flame that didn't exist at the school. So imagine by introducing the store, the curriculum, kind of the entrepreneurial aspect, what it can do for an organization like this. It also, I think, as a maybe unanticipated outcome, it gave the school so much encouragement and momentum that it gave them a springboard for more innovation. And that in turn helped result in more store and school offerings. The school has actually added other things as part of the Fin Shop. So most recently they created two things. One is called the Silver Fins. So they involve grandparents in the store and allow for the grandparents as part of kind of an intergenerational approach to both become involved, to help sell, and to help purchase things that maybe they wouldn't have done otherwise. They also just launched something called InstaFin. So if you think about Instacart and the idea that you can pre-order, have somebody shop for it and deliver it to you, that's what the school did as part of the Fin Shop. So InstaFin was one of their new innovations. So, and it's added a real element of fun that the students, faculty, and others look forward to as part of the venture. Okay, so with that, let me pause and open it up and ask if anybody has any questions about the Fin Shop, the process they went through, and their the earned income venture in general. Any questions? Rod?
Yeah, do you have any idea how much of that revenue came from within the school per se versus products being bought by outside people, families, or whatever? In other words, are they relying on, I mean, with 250 students, that helps. But is there part of that revenue coming from sources other than the parent and the family themselves?
Yeah, I will say the majority of the revenue in their case is coming from the students and the families, simply because one, the class supply kits contribute significant revenue, and also the PE uniforms, which everybody needs to purchase, and school spirit merchandise as well. And then, of course, as I said, the students that are coming into the store each day to purchase snacks are also fueling that revenue as well. But probably at the present time, about 20% of revenue is coming from outside sources, meaning alumni and others from the community. So, again, it's a little bit, the model was intended by design to be heavily reliant on the student population who would have, the families would have purchased a lot of those items at, for-profit entities, at Target, at Walmart, on Amazon. So the idea was to bring the income in-house and really help it, contribute to mission. So good question, Ron.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, then let's go on to story 3. All right, Larry, I'm going to turn it back to you.
All right. As Mike said, when we started all this, there's a little bit of repetition in here, and we do this on purpose, again, because you'll go through this process in making a decision about which earned income you'll move forward with idea. Let me introduce Adrienne Cochran. She's the CEO of the YWCA Hartford region. It's a fairly large Y. So there she is. We have a similar work that we're doing in Hartford with the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, and they're one of the organizations that went through, or is still going through, actually, that initiative. So they're about eliminating racism, empowering women, and promoting peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all in the greater Hartford area. Many of you are familiar with YWCAs and the work that they do. So During the lab series, they considered 3 earned income opportunities. 1, training, workshops, and curricula. They had some curricula in place. They were doing some trainings and workshops, but they had never really monetized it or kind of thought through, the target markets for that. Something kind of really out there was develop an online flora and gift boutique, which they had no experience in at all. And the third idea was English language classes. They were doing some English language classes, but they weren't necessarily charging for those. They were looking at some of the work that was done with the Literacy Council in Sarasota, and maybe they could approach maybe some of the target markets that the Literacy Council had approached. So those are the 3 ideas that they came up with. Again, they did a SWOT analysis on each one of those, which was important. The risk and mitigation exercise, again, those that are threats and weaknesses, can they mitigate those to actually move that idea forward? It's really important. They gathered a lot of preliminary information, and this team, because their 3 ideas were so different from each other, spent a lot of time gathering information in doing that. They had conversations internally and externally, make sure that their board was on board with the idea of moving forward with earned income, since they really hadn't done much of it at all, and talked to a lot of outside folks. Again, as Mike said, and as I shared in the beginning, they went through a process. Is there market need and demand? So they looked at their 3 ideas and they're thinking, wow, does anyone out there want it? And are they asking for it? Are there customers to buy it? So if they're doing ESL classes, who would buy that? And do they have the money to actually buy it, those that need it? Or do we have to go after a secondary market like businesses that do have the money to buy it? Operational ease, again, is this going to be a hard lift, or could we get it, could we do it with maybe just adding a staff member or 2? Speed to market, slow ramp up, or is this going to take, can we do it quickly? Again, margin contribution and mission contribution, they looked at each one of those, and again, somewhat of a guess in the beginning, based on how many do they think they could do in each one of those 3 ideas, and could they make money out of those, and how many people could they reach in doing so. So after they did that, they narrowed their focus to 1. They again secured board approval, which we would want you all to secure board approval prior to moving forward. And then they shared that idea with key staff volunteers and donors. And a couple of those ideas, there was going to be a pretty heavy ramp up as far as startup capital. So they wanted to make sure that their donors were on board from the very, very beginning. So which one do you think they picked, Josephine?
And here we go. So which earned income do you think the YWCA chose? I love this part. The answers are coming in quick. It's an easy question.
We like that.
Yeah. All right, one more second. Any stragglers? And here we go.
All right. Well, if
And
Josephine had her way and we gave gifts out, how many gifts would we be giving away, Josephine? Only 2, right?
Exactly.
So let's move on. They picked the floral idea. This is something they had never done before. They didn't have anyone on staff that had been a florist in the past, but they knew that there was this big void in the community for florists, one, especially after the pandemic, because some of them had closed, so there was a void there. And they could make it mission aligned because it could be an employment training program for women going through their programs. That was the key to all of that. So they created persimmon petals, flowers that empower. They created a website. You can purchase them online. available to individuals or events. And it's, again, like, as I said a minute ago, a job training program for women participating in Y programs. And we match them up with some other employment training programs in different parts of the country. And we had conversations with those organizations to say, how do you do this right in the beginning? How do we not make the big mistakes that they maybe would make if they didn't have maybe a mentor organization out there? So we thank our other partners in different parts of the country that helped them in the very, very beginning with us. But Persimmons Petals was created and launched. The business planning team, as you can see, was there. They included leadership, board, and staff. They developed that business plan with input from lots of folks. They communicated with key stakeholders. And I have to say, the implementation part of the business plan, the marketing and sales piece of it, they had to do a lot of research because, again, keep in mind, they didn't have the background of running a florist business before. So a couple of these folks you see in the pictures spent a lot of time gathering that research and learning a lot along the way. They raised their startup capital. They held a fast pitch, and donors were there. They actually had a donor, and we did this fast pitch virtual. They had a donor who actually gave $20,000 at the fast pitch, which was really helpful and beneficial. They met one-on-one with some individual donors that couldn't attend that fast pitch, and they had really diligent follow-up. Their board was fully engaged, meaning that each board member contributed something along the way. And the board members were involved with helping doing outreach and speak with donors out there. They generated $130,000 in startup capital, which wasn't quite their whole startup capital need, but it was enough to get it off the ground. So what did they do? They had to invest in marketing and sales and their new website during the implementation process. They created a whole website, which is really amazing, and began that business development and outreach. They hired 2 full-time staff, a floral manager. So they found somebody who was currently working and had won competitions in the community for her floral arrangements, had always wanted to take that manager lead. They hired her in first, and then just recently, 3 weeks ago, they hired another floral designer. And I have to say, the floral designer was actually scheduled to be hired in year 2 of the business plan. But because it's doing so well, they were able to hire somebody in sooner. They purchased and trained on a new floral management software. They had to get refrigeration units. So you can see in the picture, there's a picture of one of the refrigeration units. They have one of them up in their lobby of the Y. So people who purchase flowers can stop by and just pick it up there. They're selling some directly out of there, but it's this visual, everyone who comes into their building, that they have this new business up and running that's mission focused and aligned. They negotiated agreements with flower distributors, which is something they had to learn along the way as part of their business planning. Where do they buy the flowers from? How much do they cost? But thank goodness this floral manager had purchased flowers, and so she brought a lot of expertise in there. And then they launched the business. They just launched about 2 months ago. Their projected revenue, very, very conservative. They showed break even both year 1 and year 2. Year 1 because they hadn't quite raised their startup capital, and going into year 2, they were going to add new staff and basically roll most of the revenue back into the business. So they were looking at 2 break-even years and then having a small profit margin in year 3. I would love to report out next year on these numbers because I believe year 2 will show a fairly significant profit margin for this organization. Really excited about the work that they're doing. They attracted new donors to the Y. They had donors that they've always wanted to ask resources from, but didn't have the right idea or the right program. And imagine having a 50, 60 page business plan to give to a donor to say, this is the amount of work that went into this. And they had new donors that they had never been donors to them before, now on board. They had an article in the Hartford Business Journal just recently about this work and the launch of their business, showing pictures and flowers, and it's very, very exciting for them. Their first client was actually the Hartford Foundation. They hadn't hired their first staff member yet, and the foundation was doing this big event, a donor appreciation event. And this is a very, very large foundation. So there was a lot of their donors that were in the room. And they had contracted with this business to do the flower arrangements for all of the tables before they had their first staff person. So you can imagine the pressure that they were feeling under just a little bit to deliver, which they did with flying colors. So what are, I guess I'll just open it up for questions. They have just done so well. In fact, I was on the call with them. Just one more thing I'll share about this group is, one thing we were hoping for was that people would find them online through Google searches. So they spent some resources making sure that their name was out there, especially showing up in Google searches. And now probably 6 or 7 calls a week or online purchases are coming from out of state. And out of state are doing Google searches because they want to send their mom flowers or their dad flowers or somebody flowers in Hartford, and that's how they find them. And they feel good because they know it's a nonprofit that is doing the work, as opposed to the money going to a for-profit. So anyway, I'm feeling great about that. The group is feeling great about that, and their sales have skyrocketed. So any questions? Yeah, Mike.
Not so much a question, but maybe you can share a little bit more about how the team was feeling as they were pondering those 3 earned income possibilities and deciding to focus on the one that was probably the most risky, you know, the most creative in terms of those 3 earned income ideas. And you know, for all the organizations that are participating in today's session, you know, how do you kind of balance that whole thing about, should we create something that's sort of new and very unexpected versus focus on something that we already have and are already doing? Because I know, Larry, and maybe you can share a little bit about this, the board chair at the Y also happened to have been the CEO of HARC, another organization that also did an off-the-wall, you know, sort of unexpected earned income venture. So maybe you can just talk a little bit about that.
Well, as you can imagine, it was somewhat agonizing for the team, trying to decide, do we do something that we're very comfortable with, that we, you know, could launch, or do we do something that maybe is much more creative, something new for us, and as it turned out at the end, something that had a much greater impact in the community. As far as profit margin and mission impact, they were able to create, again, this education and training model built around it. The board chair was instrumental, just as Mike said, because she had gone through this before with us a few years ago and created a sock business for the nonprofit that she was working on, which is generating significant revenue in their storefront. So she was helpful, but she was cautious at the same time about not making the decision for them. It had to be a team decision to move forward because, again, something new, something creative, you know, and we're all in this together. So she was very careful about not making the decision for the team, but it was the right decision. I have to tell you, Mike and I had a number of calls about this group also, and hoping it was the right decision as we move forward and coaching them right along the way. And thank goodness it's turned out really, really, really well for them. So yeah, good question, Mike.
Well, and also maybe you can talk a little bit about competition, because as somebody had mentioned earlier, I think the fact that even though the floral business, there is quite a bit of competition, there's not a
Right.
lot of competition in the, sort of the nonprofit space. So knowing,
Right.
that, companies, foundations, philanthropy, organizations,
Right.
individuals could purchase them and know that, the dollars are going towards a great mission at the Y
Yeah.
versus going in, somebody else's pocket.
Right.
That, I think,
It's
was also a contributing factor.
I think they're finding that out from the people who are buying online from them, that don't even know who they are, that they like that they're a nonprofit. And a relationship that they created during their evaluation phase of whether we select this business or not was they reached out to, of course, funeral homes. Funeral homes buy a lot of flowers or have their clients buy a lot of flowers. So they were able to get one of the funeral homes in the community to commit to purchasing $200,000 a year of flowers from them, which really helped kick off some of their business. And they haven't seen that business yet, because they're holding off that funeral home until they can get fully staffed up and get a bit more under their belt before they take that on. But again, they created a relationship with a community group that's a for-profit that will use them as a nonprofit. And it makes the for-profit feel good about that relationship also. So
I think I saw Ken Terasi at Sarasota Opera had a question. Ken?
No, I'm sorry, Michael. I didn't have a question. I just, as he was saying that, I looked up their website and saw that they expanded into soaps and teas and candles. So,
right. Yeah, we actually cautious them. Don't expand too quickly, too fast. But it's their business, and if they want to add additional products along the way, that's great. And as you can imagine, they're working locally with some local vendors to bring those products online too. So they're helping other community groups as and being a distribution partner for them. So
one of the things that this group did very early on, which I think has been quite helpful for them on the marketing side, is they quickly created dedicated social media pages just for persimmon petals. So, for anybody who is on social media, they're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter with dedicated persimmon petals pages. And again, they've just been, I think, quite creative about trying to look for ways to build visibility and awareness, which in turn can help fuel, demand for interest and demand for their business.
I guess one other comment about their fundraising for their startup capital. They had a couple of donors who said, I want to wait until you actually get the business off the ground before we contribute, because they wanted to make sure that it was actually going to get pulled off. So the executive director is rotating back to a few of those donors now and showing them that they have business, they have revenue coming in, they have staff, they have a configuration within their building now, and those donors are coming to the table and providing, startup revenue for them. So you have some donors who will buy in right away, and other donors who might be like, you haven't done this before. I want to make sure it actually gets off the ground before I contribute. So,
Larry, I think there was a question from Aaron.
Yeah.
Aaron, are you there?
Yeah, my question is there a tax benefit built in when you purchase the flowers? It might move so no. Okay.
No, because no, there's not.
Okay.
No, because you're buying those flowers just like you would from a for-profit.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good question, though.
Good question.
All right, any other questions before we move on?
If you know anyone in Hartford that needs flowers, now you know the website to go to send them from, right?
I wonder, just to ask the question of this group, is there a similar type business in and around Sarasota or the four-county region? Is there can you purchase flowers locally that would go to the mission of a nonprofit? Anybody know? No.
Don't think so.
we always like to ask that question in case it spurs an idea for.
Uh-huh.
for
Yeah,
the-
could
Uh,
be.
okay, let's move on. So let's see, Josephine, I think we have a poll question.
Here we go. How are you feeling about your organization's earned income possibilities now? We know exactly which one we're going to focus on. We're trying to decide between the top two possibilities. We have several opportunities and are considering the best one. We're at a loss for a viable opportunity and need help with ideas. I love these answers.
Mhm.
Few more seconds for everyone to participate. All right, here we go. Great answers.
Okay, well, yes. So we're heavily into, we either have one and know which we're going to focus on, or we're trying to decide between a couple, or the majority of you, I guess, said we have several that we're considering and want to really figure out the best one to pursue. Interestingly, we didn't have anybody who said we're at a loss for a viable
That's good.
and need help. So yeah, I think, Larry and I, as we were doing our one-on-ones with each of your teams, there was definitely no shortage of possibilities, which we love to see. This group, I think, you're an entrepreneurial group, and you have certainly done well at this kind of exploration of earned income possibilities. So,
Mike, if I can add one thing.
yeah,
In fact, we had to kind of talk a few of you down because you had already decided that number one, and we said, give it a little time. Think about it a little bit more. Take it through the process before you make that decision. So hopefully you can take a step back at this point.
yeah, and the good news is, you have time to work through these possibilities and can keep putting them through those various screens and those lenses that we've shared with you, that are on those worksheets that you have. And we're also going to give you another sort of worksheet exercise that we talked about today, which you can use in between this lab and the next one, lab number 3, which we'll talk about in just a minute. Well, we were going to offer up a rapid fire exercise if any of your teams needed help generating ideas. We did this with one group during lab 1. It's called rapid fire. Unless anybody has a burning desire to go through this for their organization right now, which I don't think any of you need based on your response to the poll question. So let's move into kind of the final part of today's session and talk about what's next in terms of taking action. So I mentioned that we have a worksheet that we're going to share with you. That'll be your homework after lab 2 and leading up to lab 3. And it's that very simple exercise of assessing each of your earned income possibilities. Again, whether it's something brand new that you're not doing currently, or something that you already are doing that you may want to evolve and grow and take to the next level. So what we want you to do is to use that worksheet to assess each of those 3 earned income possibilities. And on a scale of 1 to 10, we probably would ask that you use a combination of your gut instincts, but also some information that you may want to gather or pursue just to help inform how you're going to rate rate those on a scale of 1 to 10. So what do you believe is the market need and demand for each one of those 3 earned income possibilities? Are there customers who have dollars to purchase them? Again, rated on a scale of 1 to 10. Operational ease, again, can you get it to market with relative ease versus complexity, and also speed to market? Can you get it to market quicker rather than it being prolonged over an extended period of time? And then those last two components, what do you believe it will contribute in terms of both margin and mission contribution? So again, as you're going through each of these, use a combination of instinct, gut, and if you have other information that you can use to factor into assigning those numbers, that's helpful. So for example, if you're thinking about market need and demand, so, one thing you can think about is, do we get calls, for whatever it is that we're considering? Do we get inquiries? Do we get, people asking us for it? If you do, that can be a good indicator. Also, along those same lines, if you have an existing earned income venture or activity, look back at the history on it. How much revenue have you generated from it historically? Has it grown over time? Is there untapped market potential out there that is there waiting if you can go about it, in the right way? So those are some ways that you can start to think about that and these other items in this worksheet. All right, so that's worksheet homework, which you're going to get after today's session. Josephine will send an email to everybody that'll include that and a couple of other things. Lab number 3, as we said, is virtual. That's going to be on Wednesday, January 11th, also from 10 until noon. And it's really going to be about positioning your organization and earned income venture for success. So again, it's very much a continuation in this series. Just a reminder, we do have our ongoing criteria for participation. So of course, having attended labs 1 and 2, which you all have done, we ask that you just complete a follow-up survey that you'll also receive a link to when Josephine sends out the follow-up email. Do work on this worksheet and have it done prior to lab 3. You don't have to turn it into us, but we will ask that when we schedule our Zoom one-on-ones with you, again, we're going to have a 1-hour Zoom one-on-one after lab 3, that you just send those to us in advance so we can use those and talk through them during our Zoom consulting session. We also want you to register for lab 3. And again, like today, please make sure you have your 3 core team members there, your executive director, CEO, a board or trustee member, and a staff member. And again, as we said, you'll get a follow-up email. It's going to have all these things on it. A session recording from today, the PowerPoint slides from today, the worksheet, the link to the follow-up survey, and a link to register for lab number 3. And then the series will continue. We'll wrap up with lab 4, which will be an on-site session. So similar to lab 1, which was on-site, this one will be as well. That'll be Wednesday, January 25th. It's from 8:30 to 1, and it's going to be held at Resilient Retreat. They have a new campus, brand new campus, and we'll be sending out more details about that. But that session will culminate with kind of what we're calling a wrap up on business planning for nonprofits. So this idea that it's really critical to have a business plan because it allows you to develop a blueprint for how that earned income venture will succeed. Again, if it's a brand new earned income venture, critical, but also if it's an existing earned income venture that you want to grow and take to the next level, that's critically important as well, because it's a signal to your team internally, to your donors, your funders, investors, and others that you know the path you're going to pursue to evolve and grow that business. Okay, I'm going to pause. We've thrown a lot at everybody today. And before we sort of do the final wrap, we just wanted to open it up for any questions, either about any of the stories we shared today or kind of the next steps and criteria, for participation moving on. Anybody have any questions, comments, thoughts? No. Okay. Well, unless Josephine, is there anything in the chat box that I'm missing?
No.
No.
Did you mention when, or have you already scheduled your next Zoom session with each of them? Have you
No.
already?
We have not scheduled a Zoom session yet. Well, I don't know. Larry, are any of yours scheduled? Yes.
Yeah, a couple of mine are.
Okay.
I have a few more to do, but
Larry and I will reach out to each team to schedule your second Zoom session. So that'll be separate and offline. So be on the lookout for that as well. That'll be coming soon. Okay, well, if there are not any questions, let me just go back into the screen. We've got just a couple of quick wrap-up slides. So we started today by just sharing a few simple goals, and we hope that we accomplish this to give additional insight into earned income, allow each of you to continue to explore your entrepreneurial possibilities, to learn from those three organizations about their stories, their experiences, and again, to think about how you can apply kind of the tools, the rigor, the thinking, and the discipline as you're working to identify your own most valuable earned income opportunities. We want to just thank all of you again for taking time out of your busy schedules to participate today and in this initiative. We want to wish everybody happy, healthy holidays. And yes, we will, I guess, hard to believe, see you all in 2023.
Mike, there's a quick question in chat.
Yeah.
Who needs to be on the follow-up Zoom private sessions?
So again, we'll follow up with each of you to let you know. We would certainly encourage and ask each of you to have your core team on those sessions. It's really helpful, especially as we're starting to, sort of put the earned income possibilities through that funnel and ultimately land on one. So it's always a good thing to know that the leader, the board or trustee, and your staff are aligned in your thinking and are interested in really moving, it forward. So that's what we would ask each of you to do. But again, we'll follow up with you on offline rather after today's session. So with that, we're going to wrap a little bit early and give everybody the gift of time. And we thank you all for joining, and we'll see you next year.
happy holidays.